Ever since Overwatch's initial announcement, Blizzard has done an excellent job at selling the gaming community at large on their new IP. The only glaring omission that some gamers have been pointing out is Overwatch's lack of campaign, and their limited amount of match types. But are they limited? And if they are, does it matter? Hey, I'm AJ, and I've realized a recent trend in games lately, and it seems like a scenario that contradicts itself. Gamers these days seem to have an expectation of developers to craft long, expansive single-player campaigns, all the while providing a quality multiplayer experience with a variety of play types. The problem with this is both of these scenarios cost developers a ton of time and money, even though most of the time, only one of those investments fully pays off. I mean, think about it. How many hardcore Call of Duty players do you know that invest any real time into the single player campaign? And how many people do you know that have had Uncharted 4 since launch and continue to play the online multiplayer mode to this day? Chances are not many. Except for you, random guy in the comments that just said, "I do that," just to spite me. Shut up. Anyway, like I said, not many. Most games with longevity have a primary focus in one area. Either it's a huge expansive single player game with hundreds of hours of quests that no normally functioning human being could possibly see the end of within the first few months of it being released, or it's a multiplayer game that launches with a ton of maps and game types. And though they don't normally hold most players' attention for long, if at all, the single player campaigns are there to keep gamers busy long enough for it to be supported with pretty decently sized DLC packs. And then there's Overwatch. At launch, Overwatch had 11 maps and 2 main game modes. For comparison's sake, Call of Duty Black Ops 3 launched with 18 maps, 20 if you pre-ordered, and 17 game types. Now, in the interest of fairness, I do want to at least point out that Overwatch has received an additional map in the form of a free update and is slated to receive more free content down the line. But as a counterpoint in Call of Duty's defense, that game has also received additional maps in the form of 4 DLC packs, which, again, to be fair, cost money, but you get plenty of bang for your buck as those packs bring the total map count to a staggering 40. And again, I mean, we can't gloss over the campaign, even though most do. Point is, Call of Duty has it, Overwatch doesn't. Now that's not to say anything of the quality of either of these games. Call of Duty and other first-person shooters akin to it have a ton more content than Overwatch, but does that make them better? I'd argue no. Here's why. The developers over at Blizzard put a lot of time and effort into the balance of their games, and as such, it's quite the feat for a game like Overwatch to have so many heroes, all with their own unique playstyles. And when I say unique, I really want to stress the level of diversity in Overwatch's cast of heroes. I'm talking competitive fighting game tier list levels of diversity here. And once you bring tier lists into the discussion, it starts to get even more impressive. There's no one hero in Overwatch that's categorically the best in every scenario. Just in certain rock, paper, scissors like scenarios. Having trouble against a team of Bastions? Pull out Genji and get to work. This concept is the bread and butter of Overwatch. The onus is on you as a player to become proficient with a wide array of heroes to be of use to multiple team makeups. And that aspect of the game is Overwatch's biggest gun in this fight. There's endless amounts of playtime tied to mastering every individual hero and learning where they fit in best for every given scenario on each map and each game type, let alone learning how your chosen hero matches up with and against other heroes. Now, when comparing other games in this genre, we could look at perks and classes as the closest equivalents to what Overwatch offers in terms of diversity. And if we're being honest here, the potential playstyles that are represented in those games pales in comparison. A perk that changes a player's stats or level of reliance on certain combat tactics is one thing, but in Overwatch, 2 heroes can feel as different from one another as 2 different characters from 2 shooters altogether. Pharah, for instance, feels like a Quake character. Soldier 76 feels more akin to Call of Duty. D.Va is reminiscent of Titanfall. There's tons to master in Overwatch, and the characters themselves aren't all that Overwatch provides in terms of quality. It also benefits by how teamwork focused Victory is in its game modes. Overwatch is set up in such a way that regardless of what your playstyle is, you can be a valuable asset to your team because of the aforementioned diversity. This concept is less reminiscent of Overwatch's FPS brethren and closer at a glance to how MOBAs are structured. You'd be hard pressed to succeed in MOBAs with a team of incompetent players. First-person shooters, on the other hand, can have a star player or two carry their team of 16 to victory. Most of them, at least. As I mentioned before, a lot of the draw of Overwatch is how your hero matches up against opposing heroes. And it gets even deeper than that because how you match up is only a small piece of the puzzle. This dependence on the team dynamic really gives Overwatch a unique position in the FPS space, especially on console. And that's just the gameplay part of the discussion. What about story? Now, if I'm being honest, I'd argue that if you're going to focus on one over the other, you might as well not include both. And if you're not paying close enough attention, you may feel like Blizzard agrees wholeheartedly with this idea. The thing is, upon further inspection, you'd realize they clearly don't agree at all. The amount of lore that's tucked away in Overwatch is awe-inspiring, to say the least. And I'd say the best part of that is, all of it is 100% optional, and set up in such a way that it almost feels like a puzzle. It's an additional time investment that pays off as much or as little as you want it to. There are tons of ways to learn about the world of Overwatch on a deep level, with all of the intricacies that are available to us or just enough to understand your favorite character and their involvement in the world. For example, it's perfectly reasonable to assume that a good percentage of players that love Tracer are completely unaware of her background. They may even think there was no real thought put into her at all. Maybe they just think she's a really fast, quirky British lady. However, they'd assume wrong. Tracer has a well thought out backstory, as does every other character in the game, including unreleased characters. It's time for the fun part. Let's look at some backstories. With that being said, let's circle back to Tracer. Lena Oxton, Tracer's real name, was the youngest member to have joined Overwatch's experimental flight program, and for good reason. She was a badass pilot and was handpicked to test their prototype teleporting fighter jet, Slipstream. As luck would have it, on the inaugural flight, the teleportation matrix malfunctioned. Tracer was presumed to be dead up until she reappeared months later and discovered that she suffered from what was dubbed to be chronal disassociation, which led to her inability to maintain her physical form. That is, until fellow Overwatch hero Winston created the chronal accelerator, which succeeded in maintaining her form. In addition to that, Tracer was afforded the ability to both speed up and slow down the time around her, which led to her becoming one of Overwatch's ace agents. The hero stories in Overwatch that are the most interesting are the ones that interweave with other heroes in a meaningful way, as most of them do. One of the notable ones that comes to mind is that of Soldier 76. Jack Morrison joined the military at age 18 with the intent to serve a brief stint and then return to his family's farm. These plans soon changed as his excellent work ethic led to him earning a position in the government's top secret soldier enhancement program, where he got the Master Chief treatment and was afforded superhero strength and speed, which he would put to use assisting in fighting the Omnics. The United States military's effort to defeat the Omnics didn't pan out too well, but the United Nations were in the process of handpicking a team of the world's best to form what would become the task force, Overwatch. Soldier 76 was one of the initial members to have been selected alongside another familiar face. Or I guess, his face isn't very familiar. His face probably got fucked up, but we'll get back to that later. Regardless, we know this guy, it's Reaper. Or as he was better known then, Gabriel Reyes. Reaper was a member of the same soldier enhancement program as Soldier 76, so they had become good friends during their time together. Reaper would be chosen to lead Overwatch, though Soldier 76 would prove to be a much more instrumental force in the early days of Overwatch. He was a key factor in unifying the diverse cast of characters that made up Overwatch, and their ability to work together led to them defeating the Omnics. Because of his contributions, Soldier 76 was made the first official commander of Overwatch, which would lead to him and his former close friend and superior, Reaper, having a falling out. Reaper eventually led an internal rebellion, which culminated in Soldier 76 and Reaper fighting to their assumed deaths and the eventual disbandment of Overwatch. This story interweaves into many other heroes that we know from the game, and the only way to really know all of it is to delve into the comic alongside the awesome animated shorts, in addition to the written bios of the heroes in the game. All of that fucking transmedia gold, and it's completely up to you to experience as much or as little as you want. I think it says a lot about Overwatch's overall level of quality that Blizzard felt confident enough to leave it up to the player to search out the level of lore that they want to know. The gameplay speaks for itself, but they also left a pretty expansive story for players that are interested enough to look. So there you have it. Overwatch, the perfect marriage of a story if you know where to look, and great gameplay that can stand on its own for those that don't. But what do you think? What are some examples of games that are worth their weight in gold based solely on one aspect of the game? Let me know in the comments. Okay, that's it. Thanks for watching. This is AJ, signing off.